Hi guys, David Jennings here from the SEOmethod.com. Just got a call this afternoon with Marc Lindsay. Marc's a guy I've been friends with for a long time now, and he's pretty much an absolute expert guru on SEO. When I've got issues and questions, I'll go to Marc. He's one of the guys behind the PLR Pro, and also they've got their own SEO company, ltseo.com, and he's got many achievements under his belt, so we're very lucky to have him on the line. You there, Marc?
Yeah, I am, David. Thanks for jumping on the line. It's good to actually finally be able to record a call or interview with you, because I don't think we've actually had the pleasure to join workforces yet.
No, and I almost feel like just about every call we have, we should probably record. There's so much good content in there, so this hopefully will be the first of many. We'll try and, I know you've also got a tight deadline, so I'm just going to jump straight into it. I've been interviewing a few other people as well, and wanted to find out how, when you're about to launch a brand new site, you haven't done any promotion to it, you've literally just registered the domain name, be it if you're working for a client or one of your own sites, what's the process that you go through for promoting that site?
Well, I guess to start with, the process actually happens before I register the domain.
Yep.
So before I've even, if I can get on a client before they've even registered their domain, they're not, and depending on what their purpose is, it can come down to a tactical play on the market that they're trying to target. I mean, as you know, a better domain purchase that might be keyword rich in URL, assuming that it's going to make sense and match for their over-end goal, will give them some quick wins for anything that is related to that keyword match in the domain URL. I mean, of course, everything else outside of that, you're going to have to do, authority building and all the rest of that. But if I can, I like to get in on that level. Most people already have their domains. That's the situation they're in. So you're kind of working from what they've got. Now, if you come in just after they purchased, like you said, and you've got the domain sitting there, it's ready, it's a brand newbie. Basically, from this point,
just before you're digging in on the domain names, I did have a quick question, because you were talking about the different domain names and helping with keyword rich. How do you feel? A couple of questions that always seem to come up. How do you feel about .net, .org, and the other extensions? And my other question is, as far as like dashes in the URL, what are your thoughts on those two things?
Okay. .net, .orgs, I don't use them purely because I think a little bit more forward thinking now, so I tend to think 5-10 years down the track, and if I want to try and resell that domain, what has the greatest value to me?
Yep.
So if I'm building a website, I'm building a real business around it, in any industry, and I have a .com, it has a much higher resale value in comparison to a .net or .org. I mean, .nets can go pretty high, especially if you're talking about, two-word domains and things like that, although a lot of them are gone now, but it has to be a pretty special domain that normally would be worth tens of millions in the .com version to get a good price for it as a .net. So I always try to go for future in mind, and that future is to either resell that domain as a business later on, or for branding purposes, in which case a .com is always going to trump everything else.
Yep. And how about dashes?
Dashes. I prefer not to do dashes. If I absolutely have to break the word up, I will, but I don't use dashes. You can see when doing almost any search in Google now that they can usually quite clearly pick out the phrases that it matches in the domain URL.
Yep, perfect. And then you were about to lead into how you then take it to the next level.
Yeah, how we produce SEO Smackdown.
You need to register that, I think, SEOsmackdown.com.
SEO Smackdown. I'm going to head there now, or someone else will pick it up from this call, I guarantee it. But yeah, basically, what we do is, where possible, we try and get off right from the get-go from doing good planning, because if you're not doing good planning, then you're already behind the eight ball. Most people miss this step right from the start, and this is when you end up with, like messy sites, down the track, or you don't have your structure in place, or it can get really messy. So I always say, and you'll hear this analogy in a lot of industries, but basically, for every hour you spend in the planning process doing the right sort of planning is 10 or 15 times that you'll save later on. So basically, I sit down and I draft a imaginary view of what my site would look like, but I do it in an Excel sheet. Now, you might be familiar to this, Dave. I think I've actually shown you perhaps some of the breakdowns for it. I know we actually go through that completely we go through a good part of it in our keyword training course, but it's the structure of your site that you're trying to set out, and people just seem to skip over this important step very early on. I mean, they just go, oh, I just want to put a site up, I'm just trying to make some AdSense or some affiliate sales, but that's what they're saying now, depending on what level or where they're sitting at, and then they'll get 12 months down the track or 18 months down the track, and they'll think, oh, shit, I really sort of wish I had planned that through a bit better. And that's what I hope that I can impress upon you now to avoid rushing straight into that. So I start up an Excel sheet. I start mapping out my silo structure as per column and breaking down into how I would envision the site would look from a category point of view, and how I would basically go and set that up. Now that does two things at this point. One, it saves you a heck of a lot of time, not only in going forward with SEO, but also even in just planning SEO, and both of those are two very important points. The reason it saves you time is because, Dave, I mean, you know, when you're in the zone and when you're researching a specific industry, you get keyed into that industry, right?
Yeah, yep, for sure.
So if I'm keyed into that industry, I'm doing all this research now, and you might just be trying to find your first 15 pages of content to start with, but you're already keyed into that industry. So if you were to go through and then finish off the research and do the entire lot of research and lay it out properly in a formatted way, then that means that next time, you might only start with 15 pages. In that case, you select your silo, you select the phrases you're going to place under that, and you farm them out, you get them written, you get them put on the website. And they usually are also the basis of where you want to start with from an SEO point of view. So it stands for two purposes. I mean, as you'll notice, I've kind of combined content structure / creation here as part of the SEO process, because it is a very, very important part of it. So by planning that out now, let's say it's 2 months down the track when you're ready to put more content on your site. If you didn't have that plan there, you get to 2 months down the track and you go, what do I do now?
What keywords and all that sort of stuff. Yeah,
what keywords? And the biggest thing that I appreciate more and more as I go through my learning phases, because you always keep learning, and it can be in anything. In sales, it's friction of the sale. You want to reduce the friction of the sale as much as possible. The harder you make it for somebody to do something, the less likely they're going to do it. And that's for me as well. Friction for me to get my work done. Friction for me to do something. This is why, for example, affiliates, if they get a email or they get everything they need to promote a program, it makes it easier for them to do it. So the friction for them to promote your program is gone. What you want to do is reduce that friction that you put on yourself by doing as much of the work as possible when you're in the mode for it. Because I guarantee if you get 2 months down the time and you then start to look at this website and you go, what do I have to do content about now to keep my site, growing in phrase potential and the rest of that? If you have to sit there and work out, firstly, what were you trying to do with the site when you set it up? Because it's not always clear on the vision you had there, especially if you didn't write it down. And secondly, what content do I already actually have up? And thirdly, what phrases would then be the next best target for me to go through? So you're looking at at least 30 minutes worth of more research just to look for the next lot of things that you want to do, or you'll rush it out and you'll just put anything on the site, they're both the worst things you can do. So now imagine having to do that, 5 times throughout the year. Basically, you end up with a disorderly site that's not properly structured and no clear goal or focus for the website.